Well, next week, President Biden will be heading to the NATO summit in Lithuania, one of the Baltic states. It lies on a strategic part of NATO's territory on the border with Russia and Belarus. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams was on board a NATO aircraft, which have increased their patrols over Eastern Europe. And she's joining me now from an air base in the Netherlands, where NATO launches refueling missions. Good morning, Holly.
Good morning, Anne-Marie. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, binds the US together with its European allies with a promise to defend each other if they come under attack. And here in Europe, the allies are also working together to intercept Russian aircraft approaching NATO airspace.
At an airbase in Eastern Europe, NATO F-16 fighter jets are scrambled. Flight crews from America's European allies have just 15 minutes to get airborne.
This is just a drill, a training exercise, but the threat is real. Since Russia invaded Ukraine last year, NATO has ramped up its air policing along its eastern flank.
Nearly all the planes they intercept are Russian military, flying close to NATO airspace, sometimes with their transponders off, violating international regulations. Last year, there were nearly 600 intercepts. We flew over Europe in a refueling tanker.
They are super close. I can make out the pilots in the cockpits.
As NATO fighter jets practiced intercepting us.
If you leave them all alone, unescorted, and we have civilian airliners flying the same airspace, then you could potentially have a mid-air collision.
Major General Harold Van Pay told us the Baltic Sea is a hotspot, with Russia on one shore as well as several of America's NATO allies, including Estonia, a tiny nation smaller than West Virginia with a population of just over 1 million.
When you have a bully in school, then the bully does not bully you when you have big friends. And this is the way NATO works.
On the ground, we met the Prime Minister of Estonia, Kaja Kallas. Her country was once invaded and occupied by the Soviet Union. Now, independent Estonia shares a border with Russia.
So it's about 120 miles in that direction, Russia. For countries like Estonia, democracies that live in the shadow of Russia, how important has American leadership been following the invasion of Ukraine in terms of unifying NATO's response?
Well, United States is the biggest ally in NATO, and therefore everybody's looking up to America for leadership. This is a fundamental fight for freedom that is going on.
But some in the US are questioning whether America should continue to support Ukraine.
I will have the disastrous war between Russia and Ukraine settled. It will be settled quickly.
That could mean pressuring Ukraine to give up part of its country for a truce. And it makes some here in Europe nervous.
What keeps you up at night?
One of the nightmares is that our unity is falling. Now we have kept this unity, and I think my nightmare is related to this unity falling apart.
Now, here is an interesting fact. Tiny little Estonia has committed around 3 times as much aid to Ukraine as the US has as a percentage of GDP. Anne-Marie?
It's quite interesting. So, Holly, let me ask you about sort of the main challenges that NATO is facing with the coming summit.
Yeah, so look, I think it's all about membership for NATO at this point. So as you may remember, after the Russian invasion, both Finland and Sweden, which previously had not wanted to join NATO, said, well, we now do want to be part of that defensive alliance. Finland has already joined. Sweden's application to join is very much supported by the US, but it's been held up by Turkey, which is also a NATO member. And what Turkey says is that it has a problem with a group that is regarded as a terrorist group by Turkey, and some of their members members have been living in Sweden, so there's been some negotiation around that. Another issue has been the burning of a Quran recently at a demonstration in Sweden. So look, President Biden's been talking about Sweden's membership. This is something that the US wants, and there are hopes that that'll all be kind of nailed down at the summit next week. The other issue in terms of membership is Ukraine. Now, Ukraine formally applied for membership back in September after the invasion. Now, no one is seriously suggesting that Ukraine could join now while they're at war, because that would potentially precipitate a much bigger conflict. But what Ukraine is looking for is a pathway to membership, and some of the biggest supporters of that have been other Eastern European countries, including Poland, including the Baltic states, and of course, Estonia.
Interesting. Holly Williams, thank you very much.